Today, I can finally bring you some good news. Today, I get to talk about an indie game that has incredible potential, and today I get to remember why I love video games, as well as why I still have faith in the industry. It's time for another indie spotlight, once again, about Falling Frontier. Falling Frontier is an open space, high fantasy RTS developed by one man. I feel like it's important to say that because in a world where AAA developers are throwing millions and millions of dollars, 8-digit marketing budgets, and hundreds of workers at a concept in order to dominate the space, indie titles like Falling Frontier become that much more impressive. I've talked about basic mechanics and creative vision before when it comes to this game, but that was over a year ago, and since then this title has grown beyond what I ever envisioned possible. I'm biased, just to be clear. I've had over a dozen meetings with the developer dating back well over a year at this point, and I was the first person in the world to showcase actual gameplay on YouTube, but having carefully considered my own bias, having looked at the facts multiple times, I'm confident when I say that this game doesn't just have incredible potential, it may very well become a mainstay in RTS history. Small games sometimes ascend to the level of greatness. Hades, for example, is another indie game I believe achieved such a status, or Slay the Spire, the best roguelike I've ever personally played. There are others that come to mind, absolutely, but Falling Frontier to me is the one that stands tall as the most exciting and impressive indie game I have ever yet played. Of course, this hinges on key factors like your enthusiasm for science fiction concepts, real-time strategy, and space combat as well, but for anyone that holds an appreciation in those areas, this game is something you absolutely must consider. Above all else, Falling Frontier is about realism. I don't mean realism in the sense that planets will orbit stars in realistic proximity/sizes, or realism in the sense of feeding crew members all their vitamins every day, but realism in a way that enhances gameplay. Storage of munitions, population growth, economic prospects as a function of controlling planets. All of these systems aim to enhance the experience of colonizing and controlling dynamic space environments. When I first talked about this game, it was scheduled for sometime in 2021. Well, there was no concrete date per se, but the target was sometime in 2021, I believe. But now it's been delayed into 2022 for early access. Most of the time, I treat delays with a large degree of skepticism, but this time I've looked behind the curtain, I've been privileged enough to be able to do so, and I understand why it happened. For starters, the developer of this game is self-funded. Yes, there is a publisher named Hooded Horse Studios, more on them later, but that publisher actually operates in an atypical way when compared to the rest of the industry. Hooded Horse has a reverse revenue model. That means that the developer is paid before they recoup costs. Plus, Hooded Horse has committed themselves to preserving control in terms of creativity and with regards to launch windows. That means that this delay of a self-funded game was decided purely by the creative mind responsible for it, and the decision was made so that the product can be improved upon to a degree where it is ready for the players to experience it. I often complain about rushed timelines and publisher interference, so understanding that those problems simply don't exist here, well, it's reassuring and it builds a lot of confidence. Falling Frontier has grown immensely in the past year. There's a scenario creator in the works that will allow users to generate their own planetary systems. There's a campaign in the works as well, and that campaign will include scripted, unique events with persistent choice-based effects later down the line. Saving one crew here or salvaging that ship there will have a lasting impact on future scenarios, and all of this is being created without a subtraction in other areas. Video games, unfortunately, often fall into a resource trap of sorts, where one feature, if it proves too expensive, will be stripped out or gutted to make way for another feature. Games often find themselves in a position where fixes just break other things, or they get so complex from an engine and baseline code perspective that further development becomes more difficult. Falling Frontier doesn't actually have those problems. I have learned so much from my relationship here, I don't even exactly know where to begin. As an example, there is a feature in a trailer where explosions impact a planet's surface. During our most recent talk, I remembered to ask if this was purely cinematic or if this would be a mechanical feature of the game. Within maybe about 60 seconds, Todd, the developer, had launched a scenario and begun tweaking values to show me that it was a mechanic, and how the size, color, and speed of the shockwave could be augmented to make the bombardment of a planet's surface more or less severe, basically on the fly. It was and is actively incredible to watch the number of features expand for this game. Ships have realistic internal hitboxes to allow for dynamic fights. A great shot that hits the ballistic magazine can destroy an entire ship. And rather than a simple format where one ship has the highest technical damage output and thus gets mass-produced to win every single fight, Falling Frontier will have resource-intensive engagements with critical positioning, fleet composition, and preparation. Individual part manufacturers will denote weapon or ship armor characteristics. Ships can hide within atmospheric dust clouds or asteroid fields. Depth charges can be deployed to attack those areas, and the scale of this game as individual mechanics like recon stations, world colonization, and mining unfold is absolutely enormous. Customizing ships to have your preferred style of armaments, selecting crew with proper bonuses to enhance that ship's role in your fleet, and an emphasis on the value of those ships from the beginning make it so that something disposable in other games, which ships usually are in a space RTS, you just kind of yeet them at the enemy. In this game, it's almost like they're actual characters. These features come together in a way wholly unlike other existing space RTS games. Falling Frontier takes proven mechanics and, so far, combines them into a cohesive and satisfying overall experience. In the background right now, just FYI, is never before seen footage of the game. I was given this footage to complement the video, and there are additional updates being published on the Stutterfox YouTube channel, which I'll link down below. So if you have any interest at all, I would actively encourage everyone watching this to put Falling Frontier on your Steam wishlist, absolutely, and keep close track of its development. I've been excited for this game since probably the end of 2019. I've watched it grow from a bare-bones idea as I learned about the universe and the lore, to a featured E3 Best in Show project. E3 2021 awarded this game the title of most anticipated indie title at the entire convention, and that praise is very, very well deserved. The organic marketing for this project has grown exponentially since early 2020, and I'm also happy to say that both the publisher and developer have a very open, genuine interest in having YouTube creators, such as myself, and streamers showcase the actual product. This isn't a game with some sort of sky-high marketing push only to bait and switch the features at the final moment. It's a project that has proven itself to be genuine and is aimed at providing the best overall experience for its players. I have played probably north of 100 different RTS games in my lifetime at this point. Those titles are fun, a lot of them were, but recently the genre has become rather stagnant. The reason for this is pretty simple, but honestly there is very little effort to address or change it by major projects. Typical RTS games focus on rapid expansion and ultimately end with a calculated group of numerically superior combat craft pushing some sort of objective. Yes, you can have economic victories or other secondary win conditions, but the idea of grow fast, spam stuff, win game is almost always replicated in some way. This remains true partially with Falling Frontier, however there's an emphasis on logistics that other similar games really just don't have. Fuel consumption, constructing individual ships with customizable crews and armaments, plus the function of deep space and the sheer scale of its planetary systems, all combine to produce an RTS that lives up to the acronym better than almost any other game I've ever seen in my life. It happens in real time, of course, and there is a tremendous amount of strategy available, even for tasks that might otherwise have been overlooked as mundane. So, in terms of the name RTS, real-time strategy, this is the quintessential example of that. There is this recurring issue where endgame in RTS titles can become kind of frantic. In the beginning, you perfectly manage your resources, unit pathing, everything, but eventually, your presence is too large to maintain. You make mistakes. By and large, the tasks and maintenance from the early stages becomes kind of a chore as you shift from micro to macro, and then pushing the final goal. Falling Frontier is able to change that dynamic ever so slightly, and it's amazing as a result. As an example, there is no globalized resource system, which might seem like a tedious thing to manage, but building your supply lines to and from different orbiting stations can hold incredible sway over your efficiency. Likewise, this kind of automation reduces the stress of micromanaging a giant empire, and is also mirrored in how you attack your enemies. Disrupting supply lines just isn't a thing in most RTS games. You can do some damage, sure, or disrupt their economy generally speaking, but hitting an exposed supply chain depot in Falling Frontier can be a critical step in your future attacks. Taking the frantic pacing of most RTS titles and slowing it down inside a traversable yet intimidatingly massive planetary sandbox, it has amazing results thus far. From angles of attack to scanning deep space, all the way to fleet positioning and depth charge bombing asteroid clouds for stealth ships, it's all here. The inherent value of all ships and the goals put forward when it comes to economic function are designed to make the game equally engaging no matter the phase. I like to compare this game to the Amazon TV show called The Expanse, because it seems to focus on a similar idea of realistic scarcity and resource importance. Obviously, the universe is completely different, there's no actual affiliation there, but high-concept science fiction worlds and video games have always been a selling point for me. Another thing that stands out, something I believe to be monumentally important in any video game, though some might disagree, maybe, is the soundtrack. Having the right music can either destroy the atmosphere and immersion, or complement it perfectly. Games with a great soundtrack can become absolutely legendary, but games with a bad soundtrack can honestly never even become great. Falling Frontier has a fully personalized soundtrack produced by Scott Buckley. Having listened to a number of the different tracks and witnessed their implementation when it comes to combat and exploration, especially pacing, things like that, I can say with confidence that the game has all necessary building blocks right now to transcend the typical lifespan of an indie project and become a widespread, resilient entry in the real-time strategy industry. All in all, this game deserves to be wishlisted by anyone with even a tiny bit of enthusiasm for the genre, and it's being supported by a publisher that respects indie games, indie developers, and best of all, the players. Links are down below to every relevant outlet, including the Steam page, and the developer's YouTube channel as well. It's worth your time, and again, this is the hard work of one man. There is no concrete release date as of yet, keep that in mind, but this game is worth keeping track of. If you want to support, there are links down below, but I'll keep the outro short on this one. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.